For nearly 2 months, Britain did not endure winter. It lived inside it. 1955. Roads vanished. Temperatures collapsed. Entire communities disappeared beneath snow. This was not the winter of 1947, nor the legendary freeze of 1963. This was 1955. The winter that came twice and refused to leave. A memory as cold as ice. The winter of 1955. The winter of 1955 was not an ordinary cold spell in British history, but a long and exhausting struggle that tested the nation's resilience. Though it stands between the infamous winters of 1947 and 1963, for Scotland in particular, it became the harshest winter in living memory. What made this winter different was not a single storm or a brief freeze, but an unrelenting cold that arrived in two distinct waves and refused to loosen its grip for weeks on end. The first cold wave began on January 4, 1955, and lasted until January 22nd. After a short and deceptive mild period, many believed the worst was over. But on February 8th, the cold returned, stronger, deeper, and far more punishing. This second wave did not finally retreat until March 11th. For nearly 2 months, Britain was forced to live inside a frozen landscape. January, the first blow of winter. On January 4th, bitter northerly winds swept across Britain, bringing prolonged snowfall. London experienced its heaviest snow since 1947, with depths reaching 15 centimeters across the capital. Bus services were suspended, trains ran hours late, and thousands of people were unable to reach their workplaces. Even in major cities, daily life slowed to a crawl. Snow returned on January 13th, but it was January 16th that revealed the true nature of the winter. Lancashire and Yorkshire were hit by severe blizzards, while in Scotland the snow seemed to fall without pause. In the South Midlands, temperatures failed to rise above 5 degrees Celsius. Gale-force winds drove snow across roads and fields, reducing visibility to almost nothing. From that moment on, people began to realize a troubling truth. This winter was not going to end quickly. February, the peak of record-breaking cold. As February advanced, the cold ceased to be merely uncomfortable and became a direct threat to survival. On February 22nd, temperatures in Dalwhinnie fell to -22 degrees Celsius. The following day, February 23, 1955, the thermometer in Braemar plunged to -25 degrees. This was one of the lowest temperatures recorded in the United Kingdom since 1895 and set a February record for the 20th century. Rivers froze solid, lakes turned to ice, and even touching metal surfaces became painful. Remaining outdoors for more than a few minutes posed serious health risks. This extreme cold was not the result of a single night, but the inevitable climax of a winter siege that had lasted for weeks. Scotland, a nation buried in snow, Scotland paid the heaviest price during the winter of 1955. Heavy snowfall that began on February 18th continued for days. By February 23rd, snow lay 60 centimeters deep across much of northern Scotland, with some areas recording depths of more than 90 centimeters. Gale-force winds sculpted the snow into towering drifts. Roads disappeared entirely. Towns and villages were cut off from the outside world. Postal services stopped, bread and milk deliveries failed, and families were trapped in their homes for weeks. At this point, the military stepped in. Under Operation Snowdrop, aircraft delivered food, medicine, and animal feed to isolated communities in the highlands and islands. Hundreds of sorties supplied Shetland, Orkney, and northern Scotland. For many Scots, this winter proved more devastating than even 1947. The South could not escape. The cold was not confined to the north. England and Wales also endured severe conditions, particularly during the latter half of February. Even Cornwall, normally protected by its mild maritime climate, was struck by heavy snow. In the final days of February, coastal towns in Cornwall were blanketed in white. Palm trees stood buried beneath snowdrifts. Britain's southwestern extremity had surrendered to the cold, demonstrating the extraordinary geographical reach of the winter. Cold homes, one fire. Inside homes, conditions were scarcely better than outdoors. Britain avoided a full-scale fuel crisis, but coal supplies were stretched thin. Many families could heat only one room, spending entire days gathered around a single stove or fireplace. Gas pressure dropped in some regions. Ice formed on the inside of walls and windows. People wore scarves and gloves indoors, wrapping themselves in blankets to stay warm. For working-class families, each day brought the same painful choice: fuel or food. Transport, healthcare, and agriculture collapse. Extreme cold paralyzed the nation's infrastructure. Railway points froze, trains were canceled for days at a time, and snow-blocked roads prevented vehicles from moving. Ambulances struggled to reach patients. Doctors were forced to walk miles through snow to treat the sick. Agriculture suffered deeply. Grazing land vanished beneath snow, livestock faced starvation, and frozen ground made any cultivation impossible. To prevent mass animal deaths, the military delivered fodder to rural farms. Spring planting was delayed, and the consequences would be felt throughout the year. Darkness at midday. One of the most disturbing moments of the winter occurred on January 16th. Weather conditions combined with pollution to create near-total darkness in the middle of the day. Light levels dropped to 1/1000th of normal. Thousands of people panicked, flooding emergency services and newspapers with calls. Some believed the end of the world had arrived. This darkness, combined with relentless cold, left a deep psychological scar on an already exhausted population. Solidarity and survival. Despite the hardship, society did not collapse. It pulled together. Neighbors shared coal and food. Military relief operations offered not only physical aid but emotional reassurance. The BBC maintained calm, measured broadcasts that helped prevent panic. The public turned to dark humor. Frozen pipes, blocked roads, and empty coal bins became subjects of jokes. Laughter became a tool for survival during a winter that seemed endless. Children, March, and what remained. For adults, the winter of 1955 was a nightmare. For children, it was often magical. Schools closed, sleds filled the streets, and snowball fights lasted for days. The same winter that brought fear to parents left wonder in the memories of the young. In early March, the cold finally began to retreat. On March 11th, the second cold wave ended. The thaw was gradual, avoiding the catastrophic floods seen in 1947. What remained were losses, damage, exhaustion, and quiet pride. The winter of 1955 became a benchmark in Britain's collective memory, a symbol of endurance, solidarity, and survival. For those who lived through it, the cold was never forgotten. 1955 was relentless, but it was not alone. More forgotten winters await. Subscribe for more history stories.